We're also going to be live on YouTube aside from Zoom because some companies block Zoom.
Yep.
So we also gave that option. I was just trying to verify it works in the meantime.
Is it working okay? Looks to be.
Yeah. 'Cause sometimes it plays over Zoom, but I can't hear it. I assume you can't hear it, so
Yeah, I can't hear
that's good.
anything.
Jazz, final one from me.
Mm.
If people make points that naturally bring someone else in, do you want us to go for it, or do you want us to wait for to kind of be um, for you to facilitate it for each of us to get our points across?
Great question. Absolutely go for it. I think let's try and have the conversation in the most authentic way possible.
Yeah,
So similar to how we've done on the couple of calls that we've had
yeah,
before. If there are points you just want to jump in. This is just a conversation between us as a group,
perfect,
and I'll navigate as fit.
perfect. Thanks, mate.
Cool. It feels like the slowest 3 minutes waiting for the clock to hit 12.
It's always that way. Whenever you have a lot of time, then it never passes. Then when you're
Yeah.
rushing through things, it goes by too quickly. 1 minute to go. Almost there.
Right, are we there?
Yes, I'm gonna start the webinar now. Okay, right. I'm gonna start the recording. Great. I'm going to wait a couple of minutes for some more people to join in the meantime. And then we're going to start with a quick quiz just to break the ice. And then I'll leave it to Jazz from Well Hub to do the introductions and handle the rest of the session today. So please bear with us for a few minutes. I'm gonna start sharing my screen in the meantime for whoever wants to start joining before we get started. If you want to join the quiz, feel free to either scan the QR code that you see on the screen or use the game pin in the meantime. It's just going to be three quick questions just to kind of break the ice today before we get started with the rest of the conversation. So don't be shy. Amazing. This is also valid for the people that might be following today from YouTube as well. You should be able to see the same, which is great. Okay, I'm just going to leave another minute or so for some more people to join. In the meantime, and then we can get started. I see there's still some people joining in the meantime. The people that are joining now, again, feel free to scan the QR code or use the game pin that you see on the screen if you want to join the quiz. See, there's still people joining, which is great. Great. I think in the meantime, we can start now. So I'll start with the first question today. So how would you rate your commitment to well-being in general? Feel free to pick the one that suits you the most, from very active to fairly active, depends on my schedule, or not very active. Obviously, there's no right or wrong in this case. Right. I see that most people are fairly active, which is great. And also not very active, which is also fine. So second question, what do you currently do to look after your mental and physical well-being? Feel free to type the answer. I believe you can maybe also type more than one answer. Again, no right or wrong. It's really, really subjective, so feel free to answer however you prefer. The more the merrier as well, as we might also be discussing some of these during the webinar. So it's great to see what you guys do and other people's inputs in this case. Okay. I see meditation coming up quite a few times, exercise, running, gym, listening to music. All great answers. I think we can pick up on some of these during our discussion today. So on to the last question before I leave it to Jazz. What is your biggest challenge with your well-being right now? Again, feel free to type your answer, no right or wrong. Great. There's quite a few answers coming up here as well, which is great. Work-life balance, consistency, staying positive, busy schedule, newborn, low motivation. That's great. I think from here, maybe I will leave it to Jazz to introduce himself and the rest of the panelists today and maybe start today's discussion. We have some great points. Thank you.
Thanks, Ilaria. And great. Thank you for everyone for joining today. I think this men's health roundtable is a discussion that I've been massively looking forward to over the last couple of weeks. It's an area that I'm extremely passionate about, and I think there's a whole lot of value to be added through this discussion. So I'm Jazz Genesis. I am the Strategic Partnerships Director at WellHub, and I'll be hosting the discussion. And I am delighted to be joined by three fantastic individuals and two incredible WellHub partners in the gym group. And I feel so with me today, I have Matt Cannon, who is the Commercial Finance Director at the Gym Group. Matt is an experienced finance leader with a passion for health and fitness. Over the past years at the Gym Group, he's led transformation of the commercial finance function, supporting growth from 75 to 250 gyms. Matt is also a father and sees exercise as an important way to bring balance to his busy lifestyle. We also have Mohammed Farah. He's a customer-focused and hands-on regional manager at the Gym Group with over 20 years experience in the leisure industry, extremely passionate about fitness while also being a busy dad, balancing work, family life, and overall personal wellness. And last but not least, we have Angelica Barrero, a clinical solutions strategist with over 10 years experience. She uses trans-diagnostic approach, focusing on behavioral patterns and obstacles to change. This method allows for deeper understanding of unique needs, especially in high-performance environments where managing time effectively and coping with stress are ongoing challenges. So extremely excited to really kind of kickstart this discussion. And we've had a few chats over the past few weeks, and I'm really keen to sort of dive into some of those areas and also look to some of the areas that we saw in the survey at the front end. First and foremost, Matt, Mo, Angelica, thank you so much for being here and for joining us for the discussion today. I think we often hear the term holistic well-being, and I want to do a little bit of level setting before we jump into the broader conversation, because I think holistic well-being can mean something slightly different to everyone. So I'd love to hear from you all when you think about holistic men's well-being. What does that mean for you personally? And when we think about the term holistic, what are the elements of a male's life that you are thinking about when that word comes to mind? Matt, let's maybe start with you on this one.
Thanks, Jazz, and thanks for having me today. For me, I think it means one thing, and that's balance, and all the things that you mentioned kind of. So I've got a busy job, I've got 3 kids at home, and I really have a passion for health and fitness. So it's balancing all those things. And for me, sometimes I like to go to the gym or run or play football, and I like to exercise 5 times a week, and that's the target I set myself. But the reality is I can't fit that in. So there are times when that is twice a week. There's times when that's only once a week. There's times when I have to take a week off because I'm ill, kids are ill, things going on, work's busy. And the reality is I try to challenge myself to have a balance over a period of time. So I try to look back over a couple of weeks and go, look, did I do enough? And generally it's always about finding that sweet spot and not overstretching yourself.
Mo, how about you?
Hi, Jez, you're right. I think for me, holistic men's health for me personally, I think it's about being proactive with where you're at. So I think similar to Matt, I'm a dad, got 2 kids at home, can get really, really busy. But it's you can sometimes have this false economy of I haven't got time to look after myself because there's other things that are more important. But actually, that is the most important thing, because if I can look after my whole self, my mental well-being, my physical well-being, supported through my lifestyle, then I know when I go home at the end of my day, I'm bringing the best version of myself home. And whilst I'm at work during the day and I'm looking after my 20 sides, I bring the best version of myself there as well. So I look at it as, like almost a responsibility I have to solve those 2 cohorts of my life, my home life and my work life.
Thank you. Angelica, anything to add?
Amazing. Yes, well, actually, first of all, thank you very much to WellHub and the Gym Group for being for having us and for opening up this conversation. I agree with both Matt and Mo with the balance and being proactive, and I would add also keeping the context in mind. And I think this represents what you were both saying before, but I think it's very important to keep our contexts in mind. So, for example, if an aspect of your life is taking too much stress or is taking too much of your time, it's not holistic anymore. So just to bring an example, I remember I've had, and I can think of a specific client who was telling me, I work out a lot and I do all of these things and I'm too focused on my nutrition. And it was an obsession and a real targeted obsession on nutrition. So this wasn't holistic anymore because it was bringing out this, of course, then we realized there was an eating disorder in the back that was kind of feeding all of this up. But in the end, it wasn't being holistic in terms of the context was not being there. The context, why are you so focused on your nutrition? So because it was this case, not because we don't have to focus on it. But I think something for me, for clients, and even for myself, and for my men around in my life, I think it's the context. We don't have the same 24 hours. We're going to be talking about myths before later. But there's this ongoing idea that we all have 24 hours a day. And yes, but we don't all have the same 24 hours a day. So when we realize that the contexts are different and when our lives differ, then is when we start talking about holistic, about how we can, in all of the aspects of our lives, how can we do them to thrive and not to take away things from ourselves. So I know we're going to get a lot more into detail with it, but I would say context, keeping our context in mind.
And that's a really nice segue, Angelica, with context in mind. And today's conversation is very specific about men's well-being. And I'd like to go back to you, Angelica, on this one. And why is it so important that we speak specifically about men's well-being? And what are some of the stigmas and myths that we just need to confront and tackle head on?
Thank you for this question, because I think and this is something that I've seen with my clients, but also with the men in my life, like I say. And there is, of course, everyone needs to talk about mental health, and we have that clear. But today, specifically about men, I think we need to break down the stigma and the misinformation around. Not only it's outdated, but it's unnatural. The fact that, yes, of course, if we think in evolutionary terms and evolutionary psychology and all of this, we know that we have the tendency to believe that men have to be the providers and men have to be the strong ones and the one who face the fears and face the challenges, but there's this idea of that vulnerability is not going to help anyone, and that vulnerability is going to make you less than. And there's nothing further from the truth. Vulnerability is actually going to allow us to build bridges and to allow men to build bridges instead of setting all of these boundaries that we feel we need to have. I think there is also one of that stigma around mental health in men is that we need to build a lot of boundaries and we need to set. I was reading before something about not canceling plans as a challenge, but we also need to learn how to build bridges. So I think we need to focus, and a way to challenge and tackle these ideas is to confront the cognitive structures that have made those stigmas in the first place. And men carry enormous weight, and we want all. And when I say we, I say women, of course. We want to happy and healthy, and just creating a community that's going to be reinforced. We all need each other, socially speaking. But I think it's specifically important for men. I've heard this stigmas around men don't cry, and I was hearing it yesterday. I was in a terrace, and the little boy that was next to me, he fell down and he hit his head, and immediately the mother took him. And I'm not judging anyone, but the first thing was, no, don't cry. So I was like, we're still going through this. And it's like, no, allow the kid to cry. It's okay. It's fine. He hurt himself. It's painful. Let's allow for those emotions to come out. So we see it in every term and we see it in every aspect of our lives. So one of the main challenges that I hope we can start debunking and tackling is men have emotions just as everybody else. And we need to allow for those emotions to come out, and we need to really bring out that balance, like Matt was saying before, and allowing ourselves to actually have this open conversations. And today is a great example of it.
Matt, anything to add?
No, I'd completely agree. I think it comes back to that point, doesn't it, of talking about it's really important, and just accepting that it is important to carve out what you need to carve out for yourself, but actually being open with others about what you need. It is actually important to finding that balance that maybe I talked about earlier.
Mo?
Yeah, again, really agree with what Angelica said there. And when I look at my own personal, situations that I've been in, I think there's times where I've struggled to go, I want to be open in terms of, my emotions, how I'm feeling, what I need to say. And there's times where, you kind of second guess yourself in terms of, is this appropriate? Is this something that I can talk to? How is it going to be received by the person on the other end? And I think it's great that we're talking about normalizing men being able to have those conversations, because there's times where I think there's times even with my own wife that I might not fully allow myself to be vulnerable and tell her how I am feeling, whereas she'll be quite open all day every day, which is great, because then I can help her in whatever she's going through. So yeah, I think it is important. I think the good thing is, I think my own personal mindset has really shifted, especially working for the gym group. So I've been with the gym group for about 5 years, and it is something that we do support a lot in, and we do encourage those open and honest conversations. And there's a lot of support in there, and there's a lot of, we are told to look out for early warning signs in terms of if something is wrong, and actually foster those conversations and make people know, actually it's okay to have these conversations. How are you feeling today? Let's talk about this. But yes, it's an interesting one. Yeah,
it definitely is. And hearing some of that context reminds me. So when I first joined WellHub back in 2019, there was a member of the team who had actually set up, it was a concept called the locker room at the time. And the purpose of that was for all of the men in the business to have an opportunity to sit down for an hour. We used to do it once a month. And there used to be a couple of talking points. And the discussion would then just kind of evolve into whatever we needed to talk about. And you'd be amazed by setting that framework and those foundations to allow for those discussions to be had, the sorts of conversations that we were having in those groups, which is really powerful. So I do believe that is a really, really important element. Matt, I want to come to balance a little bit
Yeah.
because that's an area kind of you touched on at the start in terms of how we consider well-being, holistic well-being to be in terms of balance. So can you give us a little bit of insight in terms of kind of what does regular movement and kind of activity look like to you, and how has that evolved over time to get you to a point where you feel you're getting towards that balance that you're after?
Great question. I think the main thing that's happened over time, Jazz, is that I've evolved from the point of having different options, and actually by having different options, I'm able to fit it in easier. So if I go back, sort of as I was growing up, football was my sport, and I still play football to this day, and will always aim to play football once a week. But if I go through when I was at university, that was kind of my identity. All I wanted to do was play football 5 times a week. As I've kind of matured and got older and found the need to exercise to kind of bring me some balance, I've got into running. I've got into the gym, particularly working at the gym group. That's really helped. I found that High Rocks is really good for me. But the reality is, I have more things I want to do than I have available time. As I said, I've got a busy life, I've got a busy job. But by having those options, it's become easier to fit in. So I might have, and actually, I use today as the example. I wanted to set aside an hour for the gym this morning, but my little boy at home isn't particularly well, and it just didn't work out that I could go to the gym before work, because that would have been selfish. You know, I've got to be at home to help. But I know that I need to do a little bit more today just for my own balance. So I'm going to make sure that when I get home, I do a 15-minute workout. That 15 minutes feels like the sort of thing I could just leave behind and not do. But to me, that's important. And I would have loved to have done the hour workout. But if I just carve out 15 minutes for myself, I'll feel okay, and I'll move on to tomorrow. And hopefully tomorrow I'll be able to do the workout that I wanted to do. I've just found that as I've matured, having more options and understanding when I can pull on those different options is important to me, because you can't always find 20 people for a game of football. You know, it doesn't work like that anymore. You know, you've got to try and find a way to fit in and find different things.
Yeah, I think that's really important, Matt, in terms of that, you know, a workout doesn't have to be an hour in the gym. Like today, you're putting aside 15 minutes, and that 15 minutes will tick your box for today. Mo, is there anything that you would add to that?
Yeah, I think for me, something that I've personally struggled with a lot is again, similar to Matt. I've had a history of, you know, I did a lot of sports in the past. I did a lot of running, a lot of 5Ks, a lot of 10Ks. I did amateur boxing back in the day, so I had a good base level of fitness, but I was always yo-yoing. So I'd like, say for instance, for boxing, I'd go into a 6 to 8 week boxing camp, get into really, really good shape, have a fight, and then just go whoop, just fall off the scale straight after. And I've kind of maintained that the whole way through. And I've really, and recently since I had my kids, I was just going down a really bad spiral where my consistency was really, really struggling. And what I realized was, you know, we know what's important. It's important to stay healthy. It's important. We know that's a really important thing to do, but it's motivation that becomes an issue. So for me, when I want to get my motivation in terms of to keep my consistency, I'll goal set myself. I'll be like, right, here's some non-negotiables I need to do. You know, X amount of sessions a week in the gym. But even with that, I need a stronger draw. So like this year, for instance, I've booked similar to myself. I've booked 2 High Rocks events, and I've booked 2 10K events, and I've spaced them out strategically in the year. So I've always had something to work towards. So my training regime has never allowed me to stop for more than a couple of weeks. So that's how I hold myself accountable.
So, Angelica, we're hearing about kind of having a lot of options, which give kind of variety, and you can choose different things on different days. Some kind of goal setting areas. What actually works? So, you know, you hear a lot about, you know, you need to have this structure, and you need to train 5 times a week, and 3 strength sessions and 2 cardio sessions, and all of these elements. Like, what actually works? If I'm someone who's listening in today, and you know, I've not really got going, and I'm really looking for, you know, something to unlock the start of my journey, really, what are the foundations that we should be thinking about?
Thanks, Jess, for this question, because this is actually most of the things that I work on with my clients is this, how to keep ourselves. Actually, the question that they ask me is, how do I keep myself motivated? And the same answer that I give to them, this is like the therapist tip, is don't look for motivation, let's look for discipline. And I know the word discipline has like a very bad fame, because we think of discipline and we think like something very structured and very, but it has nothing to do with that. It has to do with the why I'm training, the why I'm working out. Mo was saying it before, is because we want to get healthy and we want to keep healthy. But I think something, and actually having so many options is great because we can choose, but it also gives us a sense of decision paralysis. Like there's so many things to choose from that we don't know what to do. And it's like we go back to that spiral of, okay, doom scrolling is a lot easier. I don't have to think about what I have to do. So I think one of the best things we can start with is something that will allow us to stay consistent, whatever it is, even if it is the 10-minute walk in the morning that becomes like a non-negotiable for me. That works, because we tend to set ourselves up to frustration because we set the bar too high too fast. And this is something that we all do. I remember when I used to work out like 10 years ago. I used to work out like 6 hours a day until I broke my ankle, and that was it. And I was kind of remembering because of Mo said. But in the end, when we do too much too quick, we set ourselves up for failure all the time. So one recommendation would be that let's start small. And I know that if we want to get some results and we feel like maybe a 15-minute workout is not going to bring me too far, but Matt was saying it, this is what's going to keep you consistent. The small little behaviors that when you add them up, this is like savings, this is like finance. If you start saving up little by little, even €1 a day is going to bring you to 365 at the end of the year. Well, the same thing happens with fitness and with health. And instead of eliminating, this is something that we work on a lot as well. Instead of eliminating things, let's try to add the things that are going to help keep us healthy and consistent. For example, let's add 1 glass of water in the morning. Then you have it. It's a very small, very targeted behavior that you know that you can control. You're going to forget because you wake up running around, you have kids, you have work. No, leave it before in your nightstand, on your nightstand. Small behaviors like this that are going to add up all the time, they're going to keep you consistent because it's going to be reinforcing for your brain. Our brains are going to feel rewarded by the little, again, when I say little, it's in quotes because they're small, but they're actually very big when you add them all up. So start with adding a glass of water, start adding 15-minute walk in your day, start adding small behaviors that are going to, at the end of the day, is going to add to a lot of different things. And that way we can keep consistent instead of going for perfection, which is, I think, many times what ruins many times a fitness journey or a health journey, is to try to go into perfection instead of consistency and discipline.
Matt, please.
Yeah, I was going to say, and Jessica just prompted me on something to think back to one of my own experiences. So I talked about having options and how important that is to me, and how important exercise has been generally for me with my mental health. And I can picture a time when football was my mainstay. That was the thing I went for all the time, and I got injured. And I think then suddenly it's like, what do you do? And I found that, walking, making sure I got my steps in. I actually turned to yoga for a bit as well, and really found some mindfulness in that, and realized that actually part of the thing with exercise for me was carving out time for myself, but making sure I was doing something that was for me, that I felt I was getting a gain from. Fresh air is important, and I got that from walking instead of running. And doing some yoga, I still felt like I was doing something that was helping me move forward, and it was only small, but just found that I had a coping mechanism that I otherwise didn't have before that. And actually, I didn't turn to that instantly. It was a bit of a moment where I was like, right, what next? And it took me a couple of weeks to realize that I just needed to find something, because it really took its toll on my mental health.
I'm really big on these kind of small steps. It's something that I think it's taken me a while to acknowledge that actually how important those steps are, and the impact that they can have. And I think I'm someone who has trained for a number of years, but reeling it back has meant that I'm the most consistent that I've ever been. But there have been some really interesting areas. So for example, one of my old coaches, he used to have what he used to refer to as stair gang. He used to call it stair gang. What that meant was that everywhere you were walking, if there was a lift or stairs, you should take the stairs. And if there's an elevator, you should walk up or down it, right? And it's small marginal gains, which in everyday, like on your commute to work, you know, most chances are you probably got an opportunity to take a flight of stairs or, and those small steps, which are really easily sustainable on a day-by-day basis, can be things that over time, if doing that every day for a year, all of a sudden, like how many gains are you making over that period of time can be really important. So I'm really big on what are the small things that actually don't really even disrupt your day to day, right? It's just taking stairs instead of taking the escalator. If you can find those small equivalents, I think that can also be really powerful. We touched a little bit on consistency versus kind of discipline and motivation and those elements. And I want to talk a little bit about kind of how you guys work with things like tech to support and what challenges that might also represent. We're in the era of Whoop, of the Aura Ring, of all of your MEPs with MyZone and all of these elements. How do you utilize those tools, and what are the pros and cons from your perspective? Mo, we can start with you.
Hi, you right. Yeah, so I actually use MyZone. So I've been using MyZone since about 2016. And it's actually proven to be really effective to at least hit my minimum requirements. So on a bad month, I'll always make sure I'm hitting at least my 1,300 points MEPs for the month. So and it's also got like an inbuilt community in there. People can, you post your workouts, people can comment on your workouts, you put pictures up on there. So I'll find that really, really useful, and it kind of goes back to that like just holding me accountable to do it. So Amazon's been really, really good for me. And I think similarly, when I got an Apple Watch, it was closing off the 3 rings every day. So just aiming to do that for a full month, that used to get me really, really excited. But I'm not so big on it anymore. But yeah, so I do like MyZone. I think if I didn't have MyZone, I think I would struggle more. There's times where I've headed out to the gym and I've gone, oh God, I haven't got my MyZone belt. I need to go back home and get my MyZone belt, because if it's not recorded, then it's not happened.
Didn't happen.
Yeah.
Matt, anything to add there, or Angelica?
Yeah, so I use my Garmin sports watch for running, for my step count, track my gym workouts. I don't have any tech that I use for football. That's the one thing that annoys me every now and then when I play football on a Saturday and it haven't logged it on my Garmin watch. I know some people that stuff their watch down their sock to make sure they can play with it, but I'm not someone that does that.
Angelica?
Yeah, on my side, I've always been a very big fan of wearables and trackers because they keep us accountable in many things. But also I think there is a small alert here, the therapist talking. Don't get over obsessed with the data and the numbers that they're bringing us. It's an amazing tool to keep us accountable and to know where we can put our focus. So me, for example, I started, the first one I had was a Fitbit, then I went to Apple Watch, and then this year I became a Whoop fan because exactly it helps me to realize where I can put my energy in. So, for example, last week, I think it was on Friday, or yeah, I think it was Friday, my recovery. So, Whoop has different data, and one of it is recovery, and my recovery was on 24%. So, really, really low. So what I decided some time ago was to create different kinds of workouts depending on my Whoop recovery. So I have the workout and the moments where I can be just super active. And when I have a yellow or red recovery, I created different types of workouts. So that day I definitely wanted to get my workout in. And I said, my recovery is very low. That doesn't mean I have to just stay in bed and do nothing. But I took this workout that I created for the red recovery, and it's called Red Recovery Full Body Workout. That's it. And I just go slow and I take my time to actually move. And it helps to keep us accountable, but also on somehow resource allocation. We all have specific resources on energy. So where are we going to allocate that? If I have a very high recovery data, then let's go and take that big workout in, and to keep it stable. So that's something that really, really helps.
I've got something to add to Angelica's point of why we shouldn't get carried away with all the data. So my wife also has Garmin Sports Watch, uses it religiously. But after she had our third son, she got a beep on her watch that said, "You've had an easy day." And obviously she had not had an easy day. So I think don't always trust the data.
Yeah.
Exactly. Exactly.
I'd like to shift a little bit into I guess the physical mental link. And I think kind of the term mental health is obviously something we're talking more and more about. And Angelica, again, I'd like to lean to you on this one, because I think when I think about my physical health, for example, I can go into the gym and, maybe I bench press 60 kg this week, and in 2 weeks it's 65, and I can see, okay, I'm improving. Or I run a 5K at one pace and then another pace, and I'm like, okay, it's moving in the right direction. When it comes to our mental health, how do we gain an understanding on where we're at? How do we even know? What are the metrics? Like, what does that even look like?
I love this. What are the metrics on mental health? Because of course we can measure an anxiety disorder, we can measure a depressive disorder. We know what the numbers are, we know how it is. But day to day, it's very hard to measure, of
Mm,
course. We don't really know how to say, yeah, I'm feeling what level of happiness today or what level of calm today. Actually, we're in the iFeel app, we have a very interesting scale that's called the Reef scale, which actually allows us to check on our well-being on 6 different categories, which are autonomy, environmental mastery, personal growth, purpose in life, positive relations, and I'm missing one, self-acceptance, because all of these categories are actually very interesting for our well-being. So you can use that scale or not. But something that I teach my patients is how. So if we put it in gym terms, what's your progressive overload? So if today I was feeling very nervous about a webinar, and if I work on the fear that I get when, or the stress that I get when I go into a webinar, and how much I prepare myself and how I think about myself because of that webinar, how is that changing over time? Because
mm,
maybe 3 years ago, I was devastated after a bad feedback, for example, from my manager. I could have been devastated. Today, I can understand it in terms of I want to improve. What are the aspects that I can deal with? How can I speak up for myself? All of these things, and this is something I actually have led many clients to create our own personal OKRs, for example. What is my main objective for this couple of months? We don't have to do it quarterly. We can do it in a couple of months. What are my objective for this month, or many, if I want to have one or two? And what are my key results? So how do I understand that I'm improving in certain aspects? So talking about our emotions, for example, is it something that I'm allowing myself to do or not allowing myself to do? Am
mm.
I hiding behind, I don't want to be too vulnerable, so I'm not going to talk about myself. So again, this is very personal, and it becomes almost each their own in a way, because we have to do it very personalized. But what are the areas in my life that I feel that I can get that improvement? So the bench press. Well, the bench press. What is my bench press today, and how do I know that I'm improving? So again, it's to create those small behaviors
Mm.
that are going to translate into mental health and emotional rewards in a way. So it's to actually look at them.
And what role, maybe Matt, I'll come to you in the first instance on this one. In terms of your own mental wellness, like what role do things like recovery, rest, sleep, social connection, all of those sorts of variations, how does that kind of play into your own mental wellness and what you think about?
So I think uh, it was you, Matt, or it was me?
You go
Go
for it,
ahead.
Angelica. You go.
Okay, no, I was just going to say something very, very that for me is very interesting, which is stress is not the mean person here. The lack of rest is.
Mm,
So this is where recovery is: rest, sleep, getting to action. It doesn't matter in a way if we're stressed or not. We all get stressed in a way, but how do we recover from that stress? That's going to be what's important.
Yeah, I'd agree. I'm noticing at the moment the importance of rest and recovery. And again, I feel like I've said it too many times. I need a new word for balance. but in finding that balance, I feel like I've upped my training recently, but I'm not sleeping as well, which is part and parcel of having young children. So I am recognizing actually I need to step off my training a little bit to make sure that I am not overloading myself and then not recovering from it.
Yeah. Mo, anything to add?
Yeah, I think for me, I think sleep was something I'd always struggled with for a long, long time. And, I had to make some real conscious decisions in the last couple of months to improve on that. And I think one of the things I found was I was just doing a lot of doom scrolling at the end of the night. Put the kids down, and I was literally there just doom scrolling. I was like, why am I doing this? Because this is just delaying me being able to get to bed and wake up early. And that was gone. So I've just kind of got rid of my social accounts, and I've gone right now to bed early. Most days I wake up either 5:30 or 6 o'clock. I'll do my gym session before I start work. Then I know I can't use the excuse of, oh, it's the end of the day, I really don't feel up to it. So I've got no excuse at the moment. So yeah, it's working out well.
And Mo, you talked a little bit about kind of doing your gym sessions in the morning. And how does that, what role do you think that plays, or do you see any role with that kind of impacting how you then show up for the day? And how does that kind of help with your focus or any other area?
Yeah, massively. I think it really energizes me in the morning. So it sets me up for the rest of the day. It sets me up to be able to get through the day knowing that I'm level-minded, I'm level-headed. I mean, it's interesting when we were talking about what's that, you asked Angelica earlier about that metric for mental well-being, and I think I read an article recently, and it said that if you look after your physical stuff, you're 30% more productive at work, which means you're kind of in a typical 8-hour shift. You're saving about 2 hours worth of work. So that's how I look at it. I feel like my brain is firing a lot quicker once I've had that workout. And similar stats that actually the same study showed that anxiety and depression are reduced by about 30% through regular physical activity. So again, it just means I'm balanced out, because sometimes it can be full on. I think for the most part, my job is quite manageable, but there'll be months where it's kind of just like, wow, what's going on this month? And knowing that I've got those coping mechanisms, it's really helpful.
So I also love to train in the morning. So Angelica, if training in the morning helps us to focus, do we all just need to, train in the morning, and that solves a big chunk of the problem, or actually is there more to it?
So actually working out in the morning, I was reading just a question that for shift workers, I'm going to take it at the end, but of course, it's not as easy for everyone to take an early workout. For me personally, it's the best moment to work out. And I actually believe that the work that we have for many of us here is linked to to the other people. So we're there for others all the time. So the psychological reason behind why it's so good for us to work out early in the morning, it's because it's our own time. Nobody can take it away from us. So for me, when I get an early workout, which can be around 7 in the morning, I get up at 6:30. The house is quiet. The world is quiet. I can just walk to the gym, 10 minutes, no headphones, just listening to the silence and getting the workout done. And it's best because our brains are much, much more focused. We have that little spike of cortisol in the morning. That's very useful. We can kind of use that throughout the day. Our strength training in the morning is actually kind of a meditation side, because we are focusing on the action on our muscles or whatever it is that we're training that day, if it's strength training, if it's yoga, if it's whatever. But starting with a bit of movement in the morning is going to allow the brain to really recognize that this is what we were made for. Actually, humans weren't or didn't evolve to be sitting 8 hours a day. We evolved and we keep evolving to keep moving. And this is something we're taking away for the rest of the day. So even if I go and I sit down, I'm a therapist, and then I also work as a strategist that I feel, but I'm sitting down for most of my day. So when my body starts moving and our bodies start moving, we set ourselves up for an active day, and our brains recognize that immediately because that's what we were made for.
Matt, anything to add on that?
Yeah, there's a couple of things. So the first one is when I do my gym workouts, I would do those in the morning as well. And I really like that feeling that my day isn't about me going to work. You've almost done that thing for you first. And actually that just helps you manage the rest of today. It's almost like throw at me whatever you want to throw at me in work. I've already had that moment, that release, what I need from the day. And I really like that feeling. But actually on the flip side, sometimes I really like almost flushing out a bad day with a workout in the evening. And so I feel both can work. And particularly when you do, if you're someone that exercises in a group, such as five-a-side football, as I've used a lot, or maybe you play paddle or tennis or those sort of activities that require other people, it's a lot easier to do those in the evening. And so I feel like I've had the benefit of both, and I try and use them interchangeably.
Really, really useful insights. I'm conscious where we are on time. We're at 1:45, and we've got some questions in the chat as well. So I've got two questions which I'd like to kind of offer you all to give a response to, and then we'll move to some of the questions in the chat. So the first one is touched on what we talked about at the front end in terms of kind of the stigmas and the myths around mental health and men's health more holistically. If there was one myth that you would want people to leave behind after this call, just one single thing, what is that one single thing? And Angelica, we'll start with you.
If you allow me, I think I have two.
Go for it.
First
Break
of
the
all,
rules immediately.
I'll go very quick, I promise. First of all, please let go the no pain, no gain thing. Wait, that's outdated. It's not natural. The no pain, no gain. Actually, if something is hurting, and we all love some good delayed onset muscle soreness. We all like the DUMS. It's great. We feel like we did something great, but pain is the natural response in your body to let you know that something is wrong. So the no pain, no gain, I would love to see it go, because actually if there is pain, there's no gain. That's, I think, for me, an actual pain, your bodies respond very, very, very quick to pain, and it's actually a threat to our bodies. So we're just going to spike our cortisol just because. So please, the no pain, no gain. And I understand where it comes from, but I think it's very important to allow ourselves to get that myth go. And we were talking about it before, when you were feeling down, we're feeling sick, we're not feeling up to it. It's okay to rest, and that's actually going to make more, to create more recovery. It's going to allow you to get better and bounce back faster. So the no pain, no gain. And
Yeah.
please, the other, boys don't cry, men don't cry. It's okay. You guys cry, we cry, everybody does. It's a natural way to release tension. And I've seen it in session, I've seen it in the men in my life. And give yourselves the grace that you give other people, and allow yourself to cry, to be emotional, to just feel the emotions around you. So yeah, the boys, men don't cry. That, I'd love to see that myth go.
So no pain, no gain, and men don't cry. Matt, how about you?
The one for me would be the myth that it's a one size fits all approach to deal with it. You know, we've talked a lot, and we've actually majored in exercise, and I think we've all said how important exercise is to helping with mental health, but that's not the only thing. And what works for me won't work necessarily for Angelica, for Mo, and it's all slightly different, you know. And even within exercise, it's different exercises that work for different people. So I think the thing for me is work out what works for you, whether that's exercise, whether that is another form of release, whether that's, you know, meditation, mindfulness. You know, it isn't just a case of I need to exercise and that will sort out my mental health.
Yep. Mo?
I think for me, I'll do what Angelica did. I'll name two as well. I'll do one for physical, one for mental. For the mental well-being side, I think it's important for people to realize. I think the myth of, you know, men can deal with high stress situations without the requirement of help and without having to ask for help. I think it's important to allow them to be able to put their hands up and say, actually, this is a situation that I might need some help in, and take that stigma away. And the other one, again, very quite personal to me. I think there was times where I couldn't maintain my consistency in the gym because I was going into the gym, and very similar to Angelica's no pain, no gain. I was going into the gym and I was putting myself through grueling workouts I was walking out dripping in sweat. Whereas I've kind of changed it recently, similar to you, Jazz, as well, where you've changed your train. I've changed it recently, just literally in the last couple of months, and I've seen massive results off the back of that. So it's just a wonder I hadn't done it sooner.
Final question before we go into some of the questions in the chat. So if I'm someone who's listened to this discussion today and there's loads of great insight which I'm taking away, but I'm thinking, right, I want to make a change. I just want to do something which is going to help my physical and mental health. I need something small that I can just take away and implement from tomorrow. What is that thing or something that they can think about which is really tangible, which they can take away and could potentially implement from tomorrow to start their journey? And we'll go in the same order again.
So I think I kind of mentioned it before, but I think it's what is something that I can add to my day that is going to be healthier. So the glass of water, the walking up the stairs, the if I'm spend 15 or more 30 minutes on social media, how can I add something different that is not social media? Can I add some pages of a book? What can I add to my day? Again, and as Matt was saying, we don't have the same, it's not going to work the same for everyone, so we're going to need different approaches. But what can I add to my day that is going to help me achieve that? Checking your non-negotiables, I think that's very important. If my non-negotiable is walking, then I'm going to walk a little bit, and just check on your friends. And you have no idea the power of connection, of kindness, of empathy, and that helps tremendously on our mental health, to be there for others as we want others in a way to be there for us. So checking in on your friends, and when somebody's talking, to actually listen to what they're saying, because that's enormous for our hearts, for our brains, and our dopamine levels just really rise up when we are connected to other people.
Matt.
I think the thing I would say is take the pressure off yourself. So just have a think about what you can carve out. If that is 5 minutes, do something in 5 minutes. If that's 15 minutes, that's also fine. Just feel like you need to go into, I need to start working out more. I need an hour. I need an hour and a half. Just take that pressure off.
And Mo?
I think for me, it's keep a track of things and be structured. So if you are going to do the whole, I'm going to make sure I have enough water today, keep a track of how much you're drinking, rather than just making it sort of a guesswork. I think for me, goal setting is important. So for me to keep track and see where I'm going, I always goal set. And those little things that you do, actually, they're quite manageable. If I'm going to drink a couple of liters of water a day, it's very doable. I just need to get a 2 liter bottle of water and I can track it as I go along. If you're going to do 10 minutes of movement a day, again, there's no excuse for not doing that. You can do that any time of the day, but keep a track of when you've actually done it, so you can kind of refer back to it and go, actually, yeah, I am doing this. I am holding myself accountable to know.
I really like all of those. And I think for me, it's kind of a build on some of those. It would be to kind of really simplify what it looks like in action. So for example, if it is that you want to drink a certain amount of water every day, can you put some water by your bedside that night so you wake up and the water's there? If it's you want to train in the morning for 15 minutes, can you have your shorts, your socks, your t-shirt at the bottom of the bed so you wake up and it's immediately there? So those things become really simplified and you give yourself the best opportunity to execute on that. But I think all of those areas are really important, and hopefully give the people kind of listening into this discussion today some tangible things to take away. One of the questions that we have in the chat is, I would like to involve my partner so we can exercise together. She's not a gym fan and not keen on running. Any tips on how we can build up something we can do together? And that's an open question to the group if anyone's got some insights or tips that they would share there.
I would start with, what does exercise mean to her? What does it mean? Is it dancing? Is it walking? Is it walking the dog if they have it? what is exercise, and then finding a common ground. I think that's always, and what are the reasons for her, and for the spouse asking on what are the reasons behind doing some exercise. We all know it's about health, of course, and that's the reason it has to be. But I think I would start with what's her definition again of exercise, and just find a middle ground. I think that could be a very interesting starting point.
Matt, Mo, anything to add?
Yeah, I think it doesn't have to, like Angelica said, it doesn't have to be exercise. Dance is really good for releasing dopamines. That's if you can have a little dance, that's great. Not me though, two left feet. And I think if you're looking at sort of low impact stuff that you don't have to do in the gym, again, yoga is great for releasing dopamine as well. So that's something you can do, at home with your partner.
Matt, anything else to add?
Nothing else to add from me. I'd strongly recommend yoga, as Mo said.
Great. So hopefully that's something that could be taken away. I think the final one for me is it's maybe even starting with something really small. It could be going for walks, to Mo's point. I think sometimes we think about exercise of you have to go to the gym, or you have to go and do a 5K run, or you have to dance is a form of exercise. Going for a walk instead of driving the car to the shop is a form of exercise. So it could be starting really small and then progressively
And
building from there. Sorry, go on, Angelica.
yeah, and also something very quick is to actually check on the reasons why we don't want to exercise, because there's a lot of cognitive distortions in the back of why we're not exercising. Maybe I'm not exercising because, like Mo was saying, I have two left feet. Maybe I'm not doing yoga because, oh, I'm not flexible enough. Maybe I don't want to get into boxing because, oh, that's a man's sport. Oh, because just let's check what's
Start with why.
driving her away from doing exercise. And I'm sure there's probably some distortions there.
So another question we've got here is, what advice would you give to shift workers where it's difficult to have regular routine? I do 12-hour days and tend to write off exercise on the days that I work.
If you allow me, I'll start because I read it before when we were talking about an early workout and all of this. And of course, the routines are very different for shift workers. And actually, that's the interesting part of it. Like we were saying, there's no one size fits all. So I think it's interesting also to see the non-negotiables, what are they, and then how can I introduce them in the kind of routine that I have. And that way we can actually get to a very interesting mix of how does it look like for you. It doesn't have to be a 5 a.m. workout. If that's the moment where you leave work, you're not going to go to workout. Or if you have the energy, you can. But let's try to check how does it fit on your routine.
Matt, Mo, anything to add there?
Yeah, I'd agree with Angelica. Whilst I don't do shift work, I've had my fair share of 12-hour days, and there's definitely some times where it's hard to fit it in. And I think it's working out when you can. And when I come back to that point, we talked about, do you work out in the morning? Do you work out in the evening? And I think having options are really helpful there, because sometimes when I know a morning slot, a lunchtime slot, and an evening slot, and sometimes I know by the time I get to the evening, I'm going to have to take that evening slot because I've missed the morning and the lunchtime slot. And I know that doesn't quite always work for everyone, but just trying to find those options and those times around that schedule is important.
The only thing I would add to that is, if you're having a day where you're really struggling, but you haven't quite hit your non-negotiables of your 3 days a week, it's do something rather than nothing, even if it's 15-20 minutes. Go out for a 20-minute run. It is, you will feel better for it, and at least you can tick that off.
Great. I think there's one more question here, or it's more of a comment, but I think it's good for us to speak on. So it talks about not cancelling plans and that being a big challenge. And I think we kind of talked about this a little bit before. So it'd be great if you could kind of share some insights on that. I guess it's one of the stigmas in terms of if you say you're going to do it and you've locked in the plan, absolutely do the plan. So like what insights would you share to kind of add some value around that?
I think check on your energy levels. If going for a plan is definitely not helping your recovery and definitely not helping your rest, there are other ways to meet those social requirements in a way, and just really check your energy levels. If really there's not an option for you, and I know that when we get canceled plans, it's like I really wanted to do this, and also the person who gets the plans the plan canceled, we can also say, I really wanted to do this. How can we rearrange or reorganize for us to meet up in a way. But I think canceling plans is challenging for a lot of people. At the same time, it's also about building bridges. Like we were saying, we need to learn our boundaries, but also how to build the bridges with some other people. Just check on your recovery. Just check on your, and I'm not talking about the Whoop recovery, but check in general how your recovery is. And be honest about, do I have the emotional and the physical energy to meet those plans?
Great. Matt, Mo, anything to add?
If we're talking about like, are we talking about canceling plans in terms of like a gym session? Is that what they're referring to?
Not cancelling plans is another challenge for me. I think we don't have the full context, but I think it's broader than that. I think it's plans overall, that things that are kind of scheduled and locked in.
Oh, okay. Yeah, sorry, nothing to add to that then. No, what I was going to say was actually, social fitness holds you accountable. So if you put yourself down for a class and you're going to go do it, providing that you have got the energy levels to do it, it has been found that actually that draw actually going to see a friend that you see every week in a class will make you go more regularly and will hold you more accountable. And it also, goes back to building social relationships, which again helps your mental well-being.
Great. We are right on 1 o'clock. So Matt, Mo, Angelica, thank you so much for all of your inputs and insights and sharing some of your personal stories. I'm really hopeful that we've added some value for the listeners, and there are some things that they can take away to support with their physical and mental and holistic well-being.
Thank you,
Thanks,
Jazz.
Jazz.
Thank you, Mo and Matt.
Thank you so much for joining.